The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our Autodesk Showcase 2013. My name is Lawrence Vaughn, Government Solutions Specialist here at CAD-1. I'm joined by Brian Mackey, who's with BD Mackey Consulting. Today we're going to go over Showcase, what it is, what it can do, and get everyone that's attended on this webinar here a little bit more familiar with the actual product. And before we get started, I do want to make sure that everyone could hear us okay. So on your right-hand side, there's a taskbar. And if you would just kindly raise your hand to let us know that we're coming through clear. And it looks like, okay, that's great. I'll go and lower everyone's head. Thank you for helping us out, make sure we're coming through. And also, before we get started here, we did want to take a quick poll. And we want to ask everyone, have you seen Autodesk Showcase before?
So we're just trying to get a nice feel on, is this something completely new that everybody's like, what is this product? Or we're kind of wanting to get in there and say, okay, yeah, most of you guys have seen it. You might be using it or kind of familiar with it. So looks like we're doing pretty good there. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. We're just about 50-50, a little bit off of that. So so it looks like we had about 42% of you guys who said about, that's exact. So we have exactly 42% of you say that you've actually seen Autodesk Showcase. Out of curiosity, I want to see how many of you have actually used Autodesk Showcase. We'll go ahead and ask this poll. So it's one of those products that, as more of us are getting into the design suites, we've got the AutoCAD design suite. We might have the I forget what it is, the 3ds Max design suite, the virtualization one, and as well as the building design suites. We've actually been included Autodesk Showcase with this, and honestly, that was my first experience with it. Was last year when I got the Building Design Suite. So I kind of was like, wow, great little tool here. I wonder what it'll do. I had no clue what Autodesk Showcase would do before that, so I thought it would be a good time to come through and see what the product would actually do. So as you can see, looks like 11% have used it. So I think that's like only a couple people here. So I'm going to get a little bit of what's into some of the new features in 2013, but it's basically going to be a general overview of this is what Autodesk Showcase will do. So I just wanted to kind of get a grasp and a feel of that. So we'll jump right into the PowerPoint then, which I'm going to pretty much rush through the PowerPoint. This was the Autodesk slides for 2013 to actually tell us what is new in Autodesk Showcase. So one of the things that is nice, if you are on the Building Design Suite, and I'm assuming the majority of you are because that's why you're here, you have the product, you're on the Building Design Suite, that they've offered inside of the Building Design Suites this new thing called the Suites Workflow. So if you have Inventor or Revit or even some of the AutoCAD-based products, you can open up Showcase directly from that product. So that's one of the new little things you have inside of there. So it's not like you have to close Revit or export Revit. I'm going to say Revit because I'm the Revit geek here. So I don't have to go ahead and close Revit, open up Revit to keep, redoing the Showcase stuff. I can actually just say, hey, take me right into Showcase, and I don't have to export or anything. So it's a nice little feature that they've added inside of there. So that was new to 2013. As we start going through, you're also going to see that they've made viewing for desktop, mobile, and web a little bit better. So we export out the videos that we can create inside of Showcase. We can put those out a little bit easier, get access to the Showcase, access to the slides. And for those of you who did not know, Autodesk 360 is the Autodesk cloud-based services. We can actually save these files up on the web, so if I go to somebody else's machine, I could download those little videos right from the web and don't have to have my machine with me. So they've got your nice little cloud service and linked directly into the Showcase. So they've improved it quite a bit in adding visualizations, tone mapping, a lot of this stuff. Probably not going to get that in-depth into it. But the one thing that I do want to talk about, so people understand where Showcase came from. You're seeing a lot of these PowerPoint slides that we've got this nice little car sitting here. This actually came from the automotive industry. Showcase was a product where manufacturers who had a car could go get all the renderings, the 3D models they used to create the car. They could put those into Showcase, and you could actually go through and like swap out the tire features. Ooh, I want the color to be red or green or purple or polka dotted, whatever they had as an option in there for you. I want to go in and add the ground effects, the spoiler, whatever. And that was all done in Showcase, and it was very easy and simple to go through and set this up. Last year they brought this out to the architectural industry and more of the AutoCAD industry as well, so we can come in, have this in there, start playing with some of this stuff. And this is not a replacement for 3ds Max. You're still going to use 3ds Max to do really high-end renderings, to do nice fly-throughs with people walking through it and stuff. but this is really a great tool for you sitting down with a client to go through and say, oh, look, here's what we can do if we change these materials. Here's what we can do with that, similar to what they were doing with the cars in the past of changing out the wheels and the ground effects, etc. So you're going to see a lot of images with cars on it for Showcase, and that's the reason why, because that's where it actually got its start. So they've also added what they're calling instant visual gratification. So with the tone mapping and exposure control, for those of you who are Revit users know how we can make it brighter or darker after we've done a rendering and we don't have to re-render anything. They've added that inside of there as well, as long as giving us, this is an interior shot, an exterior shot, kind of changing those settings. So like I said, I'm running through these PowerPoints so we can kind of get into what's going on there. So as you can see inside of this little image they took this little building, they did it, they had a night scene, then they could just go change the visual effects. Ooh, I'm going to do a daytime scene, and rather quickly it updates it. It's not like we're spending an hour waiting for this regeneration time to go through. It's just a pretty much quick update to get in what we're going through. So again, kind of the same thing with real-time environments and rapid ray tracing, get into this. So as you can see, I'm pretty much blowing through these slides. So we've got the visual gratification on just a new one they have. We have this inside of Revit, would be the Ambient Shadows with just edges. So as we're cruising around, we can always just say, I don't want the clients to be focusing on the actual materials. I want them to focus on this nice design. We can go through and set that up that way. Okay. So one of the things they've also done is they gave us a new user interface. So they have improved on the user interface just like they do with everything, trying to give us a more nice look to it. So it's got a little interface that comes up the whole time rather than having things on the screen. And I know a lot of this is crazy for you guys who haven't seen it, but we'll get into it here in just a couple minutes. So you can go back to the traditional user interface. I'm probably still going to use the traditional interface for most of this. I haven't gotten into that visual interface, but giving us a lot of consistency now between other products. There's a lot of consistency between Autodesk manufacturing products and Showcase, but they're trying to give us some more consistency with Inventor and Revit and trying to go across the screen with that. So I think this is the last one. It talks about going to output of slides, so we can export out all of the slides in different ways so we can post those online as a little movie. All right, with that said, I'm going to jump on into Showcase and kind of give you an example of what Showcase can do. This was actually a Showcase file that I created in 2012, so this is a 2012 file. I'm going to go ahead and reopen this up in 2013 so you guys can see how I got there. But this is one of the really nice features that you have inside of Showcase. And all of a sudden my mouse is lost. Okay, I've lost my mouse. Well, I can't see my mouse, but that's okay. We'll just go ahead and start doing this. That's really weird. I can see it on the GoToMeeting, but I can't see it on my own screen. So okay, we're going to be looking here. So this is a little file that I created inside of Revit. And it's a simple little building. It did have the materials inside of there. Then out of Revit, I just simply, in 2012, exported out as an FBX file. That FBX file will bring all the materials across. It'll bring all the textures across so we can start to use that inside of Showcase. What Showcase then will allow us to do is start doing different things inside of here. So if I open up what are called the shots, I can actually come in here and have a couple preset scenes where I can be like, ooh, I just wanted to go do a zoom in. And you guys are going to see on your end a lot of skippy and jumpiness because of the webcast. Showcase does not present that well over webcast. I've actually been told if you buy the Showcase Professional, it's a smooth interface. So I don't know how true that is. I haven't spent the money on Showcase Professional, but there is an option to get that program so you get a smoother design. So as I do things like orbit the model or zoom in, you guys are going to see some jumpy effects more than likely. But understand, for me and Lawrence in the room here, it's actually being a nice, smooth interface. But so with these little offsets and things in here, I can go through and I set one up that's called start to end. So I wanted the model to start at a certain location, pivot around, and go down to a different end location. So it smoothly transitions from where I told it to start and where I told it to go in. I can also go through there and say, hey, I want to go ahead and do an orbit. So this is going to spin the model around to its start location and then smoothly orbit the model as it goes around and sees what's going on there. Again, you guys really aren't going to see the model moving, but that's what's happening smoothly. It's not being all jumpy like that. And if you guys have any questions as I go through this, anything in the presentation, feel free to type a question in the Q&A pod. I have no problem stopping to answer any questions as we go through this. So a lot of these little simple scenes, not a big deal. It used to be in 2012 when you started it. Those were the 3 default scenes you got. You can go through and create your own and set them up, and I'll do that in an actual file when we get into it. So the other thing that we can do is get in here and start doing what are called alternates. So I've come through here and added some alternates to this. So I can come in here and say, okay, this is great, but I wanted to have this little alternate where the door is going to be open or the door is going to be closed. So I can open the door, I can close the door. That's nothing that came from Revit or any other product. It's just inside of Showcase, I had this door in there, and I basically put a rotation value on it and saved an option of it in one location and saved an option of it in another location. We can also do what are called material transition or material alternates. So I can just quickly click on any of these buttons and get all of the different alternates that I might want to see with different materials on that building. And again, I did set this up, but I'll show you guys here in a little bit how easy that's going to be. So we've got what are called positional alternates. That was the door opening and closing. And then material alternates, which we can just select and start swapping out the materials as we go through the product. Then they also have what's called a model alternate or a model lineup alternate. So I can actually change my windows out from a single hung, or excuse me, a fixed window to a single hung window. So I can go through and just get some of this pre-set up and go through and do this. Now, the only thing that I did have to do is inside of the Revit world, I did have to create a different export for the windows. So in my Revit file, I took those windows, swapped them out to be a different window, exported only the windows as a new file, and then I can come through here and start changing the model lineups. So if you are going to do a model lineup, then that's going to be one of those things where that will have to be done inside of Revit first before you can bring it inside of here. Then I've also done a positional lineup, which I just took this little square that you can see floating over it, the nice dark gloomy cloud over this building, and I did what's called a cross-section lineup. So I can come through here and pick all these different lineups and get that cross-section rotation to move on the model. And of course, I don't have to keep looking at the model in this angle when I'm doing it. I can spin the model around to see what's going on at any point in time. So if I wanted to look a little bit higher on the model, this is really hard to do without seeing my icon on my desktop, but I can go through and just click these different alternate lineups, and you can see I'm basically taking that section box and moving up and down. So nice little alternate lineups that we can do inside of there. And one of the things that's really cool on this is I can actually tell it to go orbit. And as it's going through the orbit, I can change the materials as it's spinning the model. So I'm spinning the model. Of course, again, on my end, it's nice and smooth and seamless. As I spin that model, I can go through and change the materials on any of this. I can have the door open and close. I can do a window alternate lineup. I can go through and set all of that up as the model's spinning and going through. Nice little ways to do it. I can even activate the section box as it's spinning through the rotation. So nice different little tools to have this go through, set up, and be able to grab and change and do this and present this right there in front of your client as you're going through. So it's nice little tools that we have inside of there to get this set up and go through and do this. So I'm going to go ahead and close this file. Oh, actually, before I close this file, I lied. I'm going to talk about the, got to remember what it is. That's cross-section. I've got to remember my shortcut for the storyboard. Is it an S? Dang it, I'll actually have to go to the View tab to find my storyboard because I forget how to bring it up. So I'm going to open up my little drop-down arrow here, which will bring my toolbars up. And then I'm going to go to Find My Storyboard. I always forget which one the storyboard is. I know most of my other shortcuts, but I haven't got to the storyboard yet. It's a U. Yeah, storyboard. U, that makes complete sense. No wonder I couldn't remember. So what's nice about some of these storyboards is you have the capability to grab this storyboard and get into it and then start animating what's going on with that. So when I get into the storyboard and hit play, what I had done on here is I said, hey, let's take that orbit and let's start going through some of the lineups as it goes through. So one of them I went through and said, okay, let's orbit this, and as you orbit around, change out the material. So as you can see, it's spinning around, it's changing materials. And right now, I'm not touching the keyboard. It's just pre-programmed where I took all of those different model lineups, some of those different shots, and basically pieced them together in what they call a storyboard or a little animation or slideshow. So it's kind of one of those nice little features that you can go through. I've got a couple different ones on here that I can play. Oops. Let's go back to the beginning on this one, and then we'll hit play. So in this one here, I went through and I believe I had the sections get animated as it was going through. So as the building pivots around, the section box moves up and down, and the materials are changing. Probably should have been on section 9 when I did this one, but so I've got this nice setup, and it doesn't look like the sections are moving. I wonder if I broke it when I upgraded it to 2013. I'll have to look into that. So nice little tool here, but again, still same basic scenario. The only difference between theoretically what I had in 1 and 2 was move the section box up and down. It doesn't look like it's working. So it's kind of one of those things that are really great that you can set up, go through, have that all done. But then what's really nice about this is you can then export out those storyboards and images and get what you wanted to be inside of there. So I can come in here and grab this nice little showcase HTML file where I actually exported that out. So there's that little scene in HTML file, and I only exported one of those slides. But in this HTML file, I can come up here and click on the slide, and it's going to go through and play that animation. I can post this up on Autodesk 360 and do it from there. I can actually send this file to somebody, and they'd be able to go through and do the animation as well. And I only did it with one, but you can have multiple variations of, gee, here's what this one's going to do, here's what that one's going to do, and just even do like alternates. So your client can go through and click the different materials, go back to the office and sit with the powers that be and say, well, what materials do we like here? We could do this combination or that combination, and really go through and start setting that up as they get into it. So it's a nice tool that not only can you do this interactively, you can also then preset up a video. And the one thing I did not mention, there's also a free Showcase viewer that you can go download, so you can save this file. Your client can take the Showcase file along with the viewer and go through and do a lot of these tools as well. So it's a lot of these nice features set up to allow us to go in and set the majority of this information up. So with that said, I am going to open up Revit and really show you how this is done in 2013. So I'm going to close this file. I don't need to save anything. And actually, I'm going to close Showcase out entirely so you can see what happens when I'm inside of Revit. So you're going to see I have that same file here inside of Revit. So I can, spin the model here in Revit. You're going to see that this has all been modeled. The door is modeled closed. I can grab this roof, and if I just hide this roof inside of Revit, you're going to see I've put all the structural framing for the roof inside of there. I've got the overframing, the trusses, etc. But this is one where I wanted to really sit down with the client and say, okay, look, we've got these different materials here, and they're kind of going, oh, I'd like to see what this looks like with that material and that material. And I can do this in Revit. I can come down and Revit, tell it to go into a realistic. If you're in Revit 2013, there's even a ray trace, but I bet that's going to slow down over the web, so I'm not going to do that. But I can come in here with a realistic material, and I could then go start redefining the materials that are on this wall. And it's going to say, oh, let me edit the properties of the wall, change the material. Edit the properties of this wall, change the material. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to do it. And if the client wants to go back, I have to go back and edit the wall, change the material back, etc. So what's nice about this, and I'm going to turn this back on, and I'm just going to go back to consistent color so we can spin the model quicker. What's nice about this, in 2013 now, we have the capability, if you're on one of the design suites, you have this suite's workflow button. If you are not, and you're just doing Revit and you purchase Showcase individually, or you have somebody who wants to do it, then what you would do is export this out as an FBX file type. So the FBX file type that we have in all of the Autodesk products is going to export out our files with their materials. So we're going to get the solid objects, but those solid objects are going to have materials associated to them. So even if we have somebody rendering in 3ds Max, we can export out as an FBX, and when they take that into 3ds Max Design, they're going to have all of those materials pre-set up for them. There's not going to be any material mapping going on. So in this case, I'm going to just go down to the Suites workflow. Now I'm going to say, ooh, I want to go export this out to Showcase. You can also see that part of the Suites workflow is going out to 3ds Max. So if I was going out to 3ds Max for exterior interior, I can do that. In Showcase, we've got a couple different solutions to do here. So I'm going to go grab the Showcase, and I'm just going to do an interactive one. And once I tell this to go into a Showcase interactive walkthrough, it's going to allow me to come in here and say, okay, it's going to do this. And if you really want to, you can go into your settings and start choosing different types of settings. So one of the things you can do in your settings is, what do you want the default shadow, the default visual style to be? A lot of the options you have here aren't that big of a deal if you turn them on or not, because we can always change them once we get back into Showcase. So these are just kind of, when you get into Showcase, how do you want this to be? We've also got what are called scenes or environments inside of Showcase. So you saw the Showcase model. When I was in Showcase, this little warming hut model was in this big grass field. That's because I chose it to be. I could go in MPD, I could go put it in the middle of a country road if I wanted to. Again, this was for automotive, so I doubt I'm going to put a building in the middle of the road, but you could if you wanted to. And there's just different scenes that you have, or environments they're called, that you have to put inside of the Showcase scenario. And you'll see there's a lot of different things in here. One of the ones I have one of my clients using is actually like a conference room table. and they use that one all the time, so it looks like they actually have a 3D model sitting on somebody's conference room table as they present it. So it looks like they went in and built this cool little model physically, and they took pictures or videos of this model in somebody's conference room. So it's kind of a nice little twist on what they do. But I'm just going to go ahead and grab the grass field. And it starts talking about if the model is larger than X file size, how do you want to try to compact the file? I leave the setting as it is right now, and I'm just going to say run. And what this is going to do now is it's going to go ask me the ground level of the environment. And I could say, oh, that's going to be like 99 feet, 6 inches. Oops, it's actually only going into feet. So I'm just going to leave it at 0 for now, and I'll show you how we can change it if it doesn't come in correct. And you can see I had closed Autodesk Showcase, and it's opening it up for me. So I don't have to have Showcase open. I just have to make sure I have it installed as part of the Building Design Suite package. And then we'll have to sit here for a minute or two waiting for it to open up Showcase. It's going to open up Showcase. It's going to convert the FBX file that it created to go into here, and it's going to start giving this to us and giving us a preview. You're also going to see that it's got the nice, pretty new interface open. So the little new heads-up display they have on this interface, I was using the little panels before. They've got this nice little heads-up display where you can start switching around to do what's going on. So I'm going to close the little heads-up display. So you can see pretty much same building. Dropped into this, but as we start looking at it, since the environment was at 0, I'm floating up in the middle of space, which is something I probably didn't want to do. So there's some settings that I deal with inside of Showcase that become a little bit critical when I get into it. First off, we don't want a floating building. So I'm going to go up to my file pull down, and I'm going to go down to my environment and see what's going into my environment. So I'm going to go down to my scene, or excuse me, my settings, and I'm going to go to my scene settings. And inside of my scene settings, this is where it's coming in, and I can say, you know, I really did not want this to be at the 0 ground. And this is also coming in with the default, and this is one thing that frustrates me. I need to talk to Autodesk on, that it came in with everything being in metric. So if I could expand these dialog boxes, which I can't, they're coming in centimeters. My default Showcase settings are to come in feet and inches, but it's coming in centimeters out of Revit, even though my Revit units were set up to feet and inches. So I need to come down here in the bottom and change it from metric to imperial, and then I can set up the feet and fractional inches and set up the display I wanted. So for me, I really want this to be in at 99'6" because my building was set at 100 feet, but I would know I'm going to be 6 inches above grade. I'm just going to say OK to that to see what happens. And now you can see I don't have a floating building. Basically what I've done is I took the environment scene, which I like to call a snow globe, and I just took that snow globe and moved it up or down. So my building's in the middle of this HDR file, but I wanted it to go ahead and be moved up or down and change it. If I also feel this environment is too big, I can again go down to the scene settings, and I can play with the size of it. So right now, the size of the environment's 1. I can go make it 3/4, 0.75, hit the apply button, and see how it's going to update. You can change the little drag icon, move it up and down if you want to, and your building stays the same size. It's just basically changing the size of the environment as you get into it. So if the trees look too big or too small, or everything looks too far away, you can really come in here, change the size of that environment. I'm going to let the webcast catch up to me there. But you can change the size of that environment and really get what's going on inside of there. You can kind of see I do this. It's looking a little bit better. The trees in the background are about the right size. I can see the clouds of the mountain. So playing with that scene, that's the one that took me a while to figure out. It's like, great, I put this in, I'm floating in space. This is kind of a pointless program, and I finally realized where it was on the environment settings. So you can also come through here and choose to grab different environments. So right now we're using the grass field environment, but I can come down and say I just basically want it to be all white, or I want empty, and I can start scrolling through the different environments that are inside of here to choose to place this building somewhere else. So there's tons of different, well, I shouldn't say tons, there's quite a few different environments that you can go ahead and throw on there, and you can go through and choose what you want. If you don't like the nice little heads-up display, or you want more environments, I can click on the little library here, which is going to open it up on my desktop, different environments that I could choose. So you can come in here and there's exterior, interior, miscellaneous ones. Like I said, there's like an empty lab. We can scroll down a little bit more. There's a whole lot of different environments that you can choose from. The one client I have, they do everything in the conference room, and they tell everybody that, okay, this is great, here's the conference room, and look, we built this little model and put it in our conference room to show you. So they know it's not going to be realistic, and they're not going for the realistic look. But now they can come in here and have this environment on the conference room. And obviously, I need to move that up or down again because I'm floating in space. But it's a nice little feature that they do just to kind of show people, here's your building, and we did it in our conference room. And you can always switch back and forth. So no, I want to go back to the grass field I had. Just by grabbing it up in the left corner of my environment scene, I can choose the different field that I want it to be. Okay, so nice little thing. That's the first thing to get you started, is get your environment set up, see what you want to see on the environment. And by the way, to open up all these different palettes that you're seeing on the screen, I'm just using the shortcuts. So like E brings up the environment. I'm going to get into shots here in a second. T brings up shots. So as I start just typing on the keyboard, it's going to bring up these panels. You could also use the little drop-down tools and go find the different panels that you want to be using on there. So like if I wanted camera shots, I could come down here and do T. I don't even have to open this. I could just do camera shots, but just to kind of show you guys what I'm going through and doing. So I've got the shots open, and 2013, if you go directly through the suite's workflow, does not give me any shots available. So I'm going to come over here and grab the Create drop-down, and I'm going to go choose to create one of these different types of shots. So you can do a still shot, basically just a camera. Here's where I am. This is what I want it to be. Pretty simple. You grab still. It brings it up. You can give it a name. This is like my front corner, whatever. You can also tell it that when somebody clicks on this shot, what do you want it to do? Go directly to it, animate it, or fade from black and then bring it into the shot. So as people switch from one view to the next, or as you do with clients, you'll be able to have it do different things. So I'm going to leave it fade. You can adjust the timing on that fade as you see fit. This is a still shot, and you can change it. If you're like, oh, I set this up, that's not where I wanted it to be. Maybe I really wanted it to be like this corner here. Probably get that dialogue out of the way. I really wanted it to be right here. You just drag the view where you want it to be, and then you can come over here and say reset position. Now that's my new scene. So once I come in here and close this and rotate it around, if I want to go back to that exact position, I can just go grab my front little corner icon. So I rotated it around, I go grab my front corner, and boom, I'm right back to the front corner. So we can also add transitions. So I'm going to go back to my Create button here, and we can do what's called a cinematic. So we can orbit, we can zoom in, zoom out, crane up, crane down. So kind of more of these little cinematic type files in there. I'm just going to go ahead and grab the orbit option. And you'll see it's got a start, an end, and a finish, or a halfway, I should say. So a start, a halfway, and an end. This looks great to me, but I'd like to start right where I'm at and then possibly transition up 10 feet as you orbit around. So a lot of different settings in here. You guys will be able to go through and say, I'm just going to close this now. I'm going to go click on shot 2. And you'll start to see that, okay, it's going to start basically where I am because that's where I was. And then it's going to slowly start animating this around. And as it animates it around, that camera is going to slowly increase 10 feet in elevation as it's going around. So very simple, easy tools to go through and do. And of course, we're still waiting on that machine. I'm almost done now, and you guys are barely at the back of the building. So you can see, I just took it, it rotated it, it went around. Nice little scenario on what that is. So you can set up as many shots as you want. You can transition, animate, and then what we can do is take those shots and add those into a storyboard and get the storyboard to animate from one to the next, to the next, to the next. So that's pretty much your shots. Now I'm going to start getting into and talking about alternates. So again, there's tools down here that I could be using on the new heads-up interface at the bottom of the screen. I'm just using the old school on-screen interface. Haven't really got familiar with the on-screen one yet. I like this one anyway. So I'm going to come in here and grab the Create button for these alternates. And you'll see that once I grab the Create button for the alternates, those are the threes that I was showing you before. One is a material. One is a positional. So the positional is where I open and close the door. And then the other one's a visibility lineup where I swapped out the window types. So I'm going to come down here. Right now we're just going to talk about doing material lineups. You can always rename these because odds are you're probably going to have like different scenarios, like how I set this building up. I had the lower material, the middle material, and the upper material. I think I even did one with the roof material in one of my presentations. So I'm just going to call this my exterior material, and it's the lower. And my finger missed the A, but I'm not going to kill you on that. So what we need to do now is start selecting objects on the screen. So I can come through here and grab these objects and start selecting them. But I'm not going to want to go through around the entire building and keep grabbing this. The other thing that I'm going to turn off because it's really hard for you guys to see and it's slowing down the presentation is by default when you select something in Showcase, they have what they call an animated grid. so it keeps moving around so you can tell this is the object you have selected, but yet, especially during a presentation, it slows down my process. So I'm going to go back to my file pull down, attempting to, and I'm going to grab my settings, and I'm going to go into my user settings, and I'm going to change the animated grid to just a blue wireframe selection. So when I select an object, it's not going to try to move the little animated grid. It's just going to keep it right where it is. So I'm good with that. I'm not going to change anything else. So now you'll see when I come in here and select the material, it's not animating it. It's just giving me that diagonal line, which on our presentation screen is pretty hard to see, but on my laptop it's easy. At any rate, so what I can do is continue to go around and grab these other materials by using the Shift key. But I'm not going to keep circling the building and doing this. What I'm going to do is right-click, and we have the availability to select all objects of the same material. Now, in this little building, it's great because I only have this material, but you'll see when I get to like trim, it's going to grab all of the trusses and the columns and the wood trim and the door trim because those are all the same material. So this might not necessarily work for you, but this is going to work just fine for me right here. So what I'm going to do with those objects selected is I'm going to come over to my alternates, and I'm going to add an alternate with those materials. And I always like to set this alternate up and then rename it basically to be my original. Because I always want to be able to remember what I came up with and what the original file was when I brought it in. As I start adding 15 different material lineups on here, I might be like, oh crap, what was the original one? What did we talk about? So I'm going to just select those and make that an alternate. I'm going to hit the M button to open up, after I hit enter for renaming that, I'm going to hit the M button to open up my materials, and I'm going to be able to now see, okay, with those things selected, what material do I possibly want to switch those to? So it is accessing the same Autodesk material library that 3ds Max can access, AutoCAD, Inventor, Revit. Pretty much all of the Autodesk products can come down here and access this Autodesk materials library. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to get into my masonry. I'm actually going to go down to I'm going to go down to stone because I think they have better wall stuff on stone. And then inside the stone, great, I've got whatever this stone is. I want to go throw a river rock on there. So just simple matter of having those objects selected, changing it, and now adding an alternate. Okay, I also wanted to do one that's going to be exposed aggregate because that would be so pretty on the side of the building. I'm not a designer. I'm just showing you the product. And again, I can come up over here and say add alternate. And I can go through and start choosing the different types of materials that I really want this to be using. If I think I'm done there, now I want to do an alternate for this middle material. What I need to do first is create a new alternate lineup. So I'll do another material lineup, and I'll rename it to be my exterior medium, or middle. My middle material. Again, I'll then, inside this exterior middle material, which somehow I minimized it, I will select all of this stuff. You can see it's selected. I'll add my alternate. And I usually go through and name these because when we start doing storyboards, it's going to be really big that we understand which alternate we're dealing with. In this case, I'm not going to bore you guys of me sitting here mistyping names all day long. So the other thing that's kind of nice when we start looking at these alternates is I've got that alternate set up and I clicked off on the screen, so it deselected everything I have. You can also right-click on an alternate and you can actually grab the visible contents of that. So I don't want to go re-pick the materials that are already on this one because maybe I had some random thing where I'm picking some wall materials, not other. So I can easily just come in here and right-click on any alternate and select the visible contents. So that's going to grab all of the stuff that's there. Now I could go through and say, okay, I'm really going to open up the siding and start changing some of the siding. I want to see what it'll look like with shiplap siding. Add the alternate. So hard to guess where my mouse is. Sweet. Maybe I want to see what it's going to look like with vertical siding. Whatever we're talking about here, now I can just keep doing this, adding the alternates, going through and getting the setup. And the beauty of this is now I can switch any alternate out I want. So, I want to see what the, horizontal board and batten or whatever I chose material shiplap is going to look like with the different materials. I really like the combination of the exposed aggregate. Well, if we're doing exposed aggregate, we should probably go through and put like an ephes on there or something. Do we have ephes? Because exposed aggregate I think would look pretty with ephes. So I know it's in here somewhere. I might not be able to find it. Not like it's that big of a deal. I'm not seeing it, so I don't think I'm going to really worry about it. But you can go through and start changing these out and really play with the client right then and there what they're going to be seeing and what this is going to look like. The other thing is if I expand this out, you will get the little pretty pictures, which I forgot to bring out, and you can edit any of these materials. So if you're like, oh, I really wanted to do dark blue metal on that, but it's a little too dark of a blue, once I get this material inside of here, I can come up here and do the properties of the materials. So as you're doing these alternates, if you get one material inside of here, we can start tweaking and changing that material out. You know, the metallic paint, a little bit too dark for me. Maybe I wanted it to be a brighter blue. And as I'm changing the definition of this material that's being used, you can see it's coming through and updating that as I do it, as I go through. So you can edit and redefine the materials if you need to. If it's something simple like paint, it's just a matter of changing the color. If it's something more like a material, you might have to bring in images and bump maps and all of that stuff to get that created how you want. So nice different alternates and what you can do, go through. So the other alternates that we have are going to be what are called positional alternates. So I'm going to go ahead and close my materials. I'm going to attempt to come down and find the door. Yay! And grab this door. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to open up a new alternate. And I'm going to do, in this case, a positional lineup. And I'm going to add the alternate. I missed the door again, so let me go back and grab the door. And again, I'm going to add the alternate for that door being closed. And in this case, I'm going to rename it closed. You know, it's such a sophisticated building I'm working on here. So I've got that as my close. So now what I want to do is I'm going to hit the H key to turn on my, they're like little gizmos to be able to move and rotate and do things that I want to do. So I'm going to grab my H key, hit that up, it'll open this up, and now what I can choose to do is start moving this door and making it look like it's open. It's not like hard, fast science to this. See if I can grab this here. Come on, reposition. You'll notice that as I grab this and move this object, I thought originally that grabbing the little center position would actually allow me to drag where the gizmo is located. That's actually scaling the door. So yeah, you want to make sure you're grabbing the correct object and you're not, you know, going through and scaling the door crazily. So what I've found is I'm basically just going to rotate this door 90 degrees and then I have to move into position. And there might be an easier way to do this. I honestly have not found it yet. So I hover over the red arrow, move it this way, get it about where it needs to be. And again, this isn't, you know, rocket science here, at least that I found. And I'll position the door there. You can always spin your model around, see what's going on with the model, really try to make sure it's in the right location. You can zoom in, zoom out. But once I've got that done, again, I can add that alternate. Now I've got the door closed alternate and the door open alternate. So you can do that with furniture layouts. I've worked with one client where we've actually went in and placed furniture in the model and then had different layouts of where the different furniture should be. Okay, I've got to get off that exposed aggregate. That is terrible looking. Too far. There we go. So, but you can actually have different alternates. So with one client we went through and actually had it all set up to where we're going to have all these chairs in different positions. So one of the things we had was positional lineup because, oh, okay, we had chairs in the model. We put the chairs in the location we wanted them to be if there was like a presentation on the north wall. And if we needed to do a presentation on the south wall, then we rotated the chairs the other direction. Just kind of different scenarios like that. So you can use these alternates to really go through and start setting up the model. Now, the other thing that you can do inside of here as we're working doing these alternates is Showcase also has what are called visual styles. And this is one of the options that it asks us during the suite's workflow, like what do you want to do with your visual style? It's not that huge of a deal because I can just start coming in here and changing the visual style out. If I wanted this to be a little bit nicer looking, I can go to the interactive ray trace status, set that up, and it'll go through and start to render this out for me. This one will take a minute or two, depending on your processor, depending on how big your machine is, to go through and start giving you more of that visual, realistic, full rendered scene. Very similar to the new ray tracing we have in Revit 2013, similar to the old realistic visual style. And it'll keep going through and doing passes as long as you don't move the scene around. So I think it'll go up to like 19 or 20 passes. If you're not moving the scene, it'll just go through and keep making that a better and better and better quality file. But yet again, if I then were to go rotate my scene around, once I rotate it, it's got to go reprocess that information. So you'll see the scene rotate, and you'll see it all be grainy again, and it reprocesses every time you rotate it around. So this would be one of those ones where I might take a shot, I might save that shot, I might set that shot up to have the interactive ray trace status so I don't have to keep doing it as I'm working. I would never use this value as a working value. I would kind of go through in this one and be using my shadows and ambient shadow type scenario. So some of the other things that you have inside of here is you can go into this little realistic with edges. So now it's going to give you black lines going around it. That was new, I believe, in 2013. So I get these hard-coded black lines around like the roofs and the columns, but still maintain the edge there. So it still kind of looks like it's pencil drawn a little bit. You've got a lot of different scenes here. I'm trying to find my mouse again. And you've also got ambient with shadows, which this does affect the environment, which always cracks me up. So I would probably be using this more on an interior scene. But really to start coming in and seeing, wow, look how this is coming in, look how the light's going to be bouncing off of that. Just like what we have with the ambient shadows in the Revit world as well, we can have this inside of here. So a lot of different scenes you have inside of there. There's also a couple diagnostic tools that are scenes. One of those is to go in and hit the F2 or F7 actually, and see that if everything's blue. And the reason I'm showing you this is materials actually have, or the elements actually have one face and a birth, so there's like an outside face and an inside face. And if you don't see blue on some of this stuff, so like I'm going to come in here and grab one of these and hit F8. If you don't see all blue and you start seeing yellow, you're going to realize that somehow during the translation of coming from Revit or AutoCAD or whatever program, that the material's backwards. So when I go back into possibly like one of my other scenes, the material might not look correct because it's looking at the back side of that material. So you can kind of see like, ooh, that really doesn't look good. It's solid black because that object is actually going backwards. Same thing if I take this one on the side and hit F8. So we're actually looking at the back side of that material. And that's why they give us these diagnostic tools, as in the F7, because that way we can come in and see what's going on. Oh, here's my diagnostic. If it's yellow and not blue, my material is backwards. I can grab that object, hit the F8 to flip the material, flip the surface material, and get those updated as I need to. So a lot of different tools in here. You can also see all the different triangulated surfaces, or as they call them, tessellations. So I can get into basically a wireframe mode inside of this, which should be a lot smoother, being able to move around quickly, see what's going on. Of course, as I say that, still slow on the broadcast. Lawrence is sitting here laughing next to me going, yeah, well, it's instantaneous on Brian's machine. But so a little bit different looks. You get the wireframe, or they call it the tessellations. And then you've also got the ambient shadows, which is very similar to the new ambient shadows with edges. That's new in 2013, the edges, by the way. So you can just look at the ambient shadows on it or the ambient shadows with edges. So a lot of different visual styles and how you can go through, get this set up, and really start plugging away on what you need. So the other thing I did want to show were section boxes. So there is a cross-section inside of here, and I'm just going to try to work in this for a while to see exactly what that's doing. But again, once I open up the X for cross-sections, I can come down here and hit the little cross-section. And you can add like a corner cross-section or a plane cross-section. This small of a building, I'm just going to add a plane cross-section. And the weird part about when you add the cross-section is you're kind of like, okay, where is this cross-section? How do I find it? What's going on? The one thing that I started to find inside of here is I'll turn my little H key on to be able to move the cross-section possibly up or down. Or do I still have that material selected? Cross-sections, when I first started them, were really difficult to me because I kept turning them on, going, where's the cross-section? How do I adjust it? What's going on? And I actually found out that there's this tool or this program in here called the Organizer. And if I open up the Organizer, you're going to see that it's broken it down into anything that I've added inside of Showcase, in this case the section plane, or the actual file we brought in. And you can bring in more than one file, by the way. So here's the warming hut, here's all the pieces of this, and then here's that section plane. So yeah, that piece that I did grab and move was the section plane. So it's kind of like, to me, is what if I need to do that? How can I get it bigger? And it doesn't look like it's doing anything. Where is my section plane? Maybe it doesn't work with that visual style. It might not, because we are actually in a, let's try going back to this, grab the section plane again. Alrighty. We're going to delete that section plane, and I'm going to try it again because it's obviously not working for me. Let me try this one more time. Get rid of my visual styles, turn on my sections. We'll create another one again. There it is. So now that we've got that nice cross-section plane, I can grab the plane. I'm going to again hit the H button to bring up my tools. And now I can come in here and just move this section plane up and down. Possibly. Wow, it's really not letting me move it. It's not locked. Let me try to select it. I just did this today. You guys saw me do it through section plane and the other one. Oh, it's moving. It's just moving extremely slowly. There we go. Wow. So we can move the section plane up and down. And the one thing that I found on this that was really hard for me to do is I kept wanting to see the section plane at certain heights so I can see into the building and see what's going on. So one of the things to me that was kind of difficult is I wanted just to have some pre-setups of the section planes. Well, what I found to do for this, which is really easy, is do another positional lineup. So I came down here and just did a positional lineup, and this was for my sections, and I added that alternate. Then what I could do is take this, possibly, ooh, way too far. And this is difficult on this broadcast. Get that where I want it to be, and then add that alternate lineup for, like, you know, right at the foundation, or right, in this case, right at the slab on grade. Pull it up a little bit more, add another alternate to it for, you know, halfway up above the wainscot or whatever. And I started going through and adding these positional lineups as I went through and set them up. I have no idea why this is being so difficult to move. Sometimes it's moving fast and sometimes not so much. And just keep adding those, and then again, as you can see, I can go click on my alternate 1, goes back up to the top, go down to my alternate 2, moves back down, and alternate 3 will move it up about an inch. But so we can go through and start having those different alternates. You can even rotate that cross section, so if you wanted like one going sideways through the building, rotate it 90 degrees and do positional lineups on the cross section through the building. So I know I've seen showcase videos where it was like, ooh, here's the building, and they had the section going through it, and the building looked like it was all happening. I did not find an automated way to do that. I also sent something to one of the people at Autodesk, and they said, no, it's all positional lineups, where you then animate the positional lineup in a shot. So going through doing the positional lineups is about all I found you can do to get the animated cross-section if you wanted to. In this case, I'm just going to go put it up above the model so we can continue to work. So the other thing that to me was kind of one of the big deals is that object inspector the organizer as I was talking about. So the organizer here has broken that model down into all of the pieces of the model. So if I go to that warming hut and start looking at it, every single piece of that model is inside of there. So if I start grabbing this nice little river rock, you know, walls, you're going to see that each one of those walls that are called river rock, it's going to give me each one of those individual pieces. Get rid of my little shape handles. We'll do it again. So you can start to see as I pick all of these, they're highlighting in the blue. So kind of nice to have it do this. But what's also cool about this is you can come down here, and if you came from Revit, you can look at the project browser. So this is how it's organized in the project browser. So if I'm really trying to go find just walls or just windows or just something else like that, it's going to break it down into my project browser exactly what I needed it to be. So here's all my dimensional lumber on my structural framing. Here's all my heavy timber objects. And the reason I'm showing you this, the first time I got into here, and I'm going to zoom in and kind of check this out a little bit real quick, that I was like, ooh, I wanted to come in here and grab all of this wood trim, so let me just go grab all the objects with this material. As you can see, it grabbed the trim, it grabbed the columns, it grabbed every single one of my truss members. I'll turn my roof off real quick. It grabbed every single one of my roof pieces, etc. I got to turn the whole roof off. And so when I grabbed that and said material, I was like, oh man, that's not what I wanted. I just wanted to be able to change the material outside of the project. I didn't want to change all of the material. So that's what's kind of nice is I can come down here to wall sweeps, and when I grab wall sweeps, it's just selecting the wall sweeps, not all of the wood trusses and columns and everything else. So being able to come into this organizer and sort it by the Revit project browser, now if I wanted that trim to be a different material, much easier to select it than controlling and shifting and going all the way around the project. So I really liked what was going on inside of there that way. Breaks the model down, makes it easy to select things and do what you wanted to do. The other thing that's nice about this object tool is you saw that I had just come in a little bit earlier and I was doing Control-H to hide an element, but you'll see that as I start selecting things in the screen, it's going to highlight where that is in the organizer. And you can see that it's one of these columns that it took in. There's 3 columns. And when by hiding it, it's basically just checking or unchecking the little eyeball tool over here. So when I hid that roof, as opposed to grabbing the 4 different layers of that roof to hide it, which you can then see there's the roof, here's the different layers of that roof going onto it, I could have just grabbed all roofs and hidden all roofs. So it's this nice little tool that if you're using the organizer, especially on a large project, going to be able to go through, select these things, and get them all turned out the way you wanted them to be turned out. You can also use it to help organize things. So if you don't want to do it on the Revit project browser look, we can go back to the main look. Maybe I'm seeing that here's the 3/6 timber columns, and I wanted to add those and the roof trusses and just call it structural or something. So you can come inside of here and start grabbing objects, and we're just going to try to find something else in here. We'll just go grab the other timber down here, which is probably my 2 headers. You can grab all of these different objects the way you wanted them, and then right-click, and you can start creating your own groups. So now I've got this user group, and when I select it, it's grabbing not only the structural columns, but the 3 structural beams in there as well. So you can really easily start creating your own groups for making things that you're going to continually select over and over and over easy to do. If it doesn't work in the Revit categories, you can always come in here and customize that too. So organizer is pretty nice. The other thing that I always like to talk about is you have your import status. And the import status, what happened is when we went straight out to from Revit to Showcase, it created an FBX file. So what's nice about this FBX file it created is if I go update the Revit model and re-export out an FBX, all I have to do is come down in here and say, actually I think it'll automatically pick up on it. So it's kind of like extracting or file linking. So if that FBX file changes, Showcase is automatically going to pick up on it. So as we go create new FBX files, it updates it inside of here. So we don't have to worry about if we go back to Revit and change everything to be, like 12 by 12 heavy timber columns and change the footings to be bigger, and we have to do everything we've done in the Showcase file with all our lineups, etc. No, we just re-unload the FBX file and it's good to go. So it looks like I'm almost running out of time. So again, I don't see no questions came up, which is pretty odd for something that I do. So if you guys wanted to type any questions, feel free. We've got about 10 minutes. I want to make sure I get any questions answered. And if you don't know how to type the questions, you have a question pod on your little panel that came out. You should be able to type in there and type your questions, and we can get answers for you. So the last thing that I did want to talk about were the storyboard, as they call it. So the storyboard, you can go in and create a storyboard. And basically when you create a storyboard, it's going to say you're going to create a new slide. I think the slide is bad terminology because it's not a single slide. It's basically a movie. Once you create that slide, you then have the capability to go to the properties of that slide and now start adding things to it. So if I want to grab some of these alternate lineups, I can say, ooh, let's go ahead and grab alternate 4 and drag and drop it into this slide property. Did I miss it? Oh, that's right. You've got to drag and drop it, I think, up here to the slide. Man, I'm missing it because I can't see my cursor on the screen. All right, so let's show the other way to do it. So I also want to go ahead and get rid of the cross-section, and we will add in our shots. So the other way to do this is to right-click on this and then add the shot to the storyboard. So I'm going to add this shot to the current storyboard, and now you can see that this storyboard has the shot. I can come down here to these alternates and say, let's go add this to the current storyboard. Let's add this to the current storyboard. And I can get all these different scenes, material, transitions, whatever. And once you start getting those added to the storyboard, you can then go to the properties of that storyboard, and you'll start to see exactly what's going on here. So I'm going to zoom in, I think, here. So you can kind of see I'm zooming into my time frame here. So at the beginning, here's the movie. So here's as the movie plays, here's the time frames of that little rotation going around to 15 seconds. I might want this alternate to start at 5 seconds. So it's going to be this material to start with, and as it rotates around for 5 seconds, it's going to switch to this material. We'll add this to the current storyboard, and we'll say, okay, on that one I want it to go at like 10 seconds, and then we'll add this one to the storyboard, and we'll make it go at like 15 or 20 seconds. So now when I come back and just start assembling all of this into a storyboard, I can just come on here and say I want to play it, and it's going to go back to the beginning. I guess I should have unhid my roof. But it's going to go back to the beginning, rotate this around, and as it rotates it around, it's going to start transitioning that material on the way around. So that's how you can start creating the movies inside of Showcase. And for you guys, again, you're not seeing the nice, pretty, smooth right transition that we have on the screen here, but you can start to see this is going through, setting it up, getting into that animation, and doing what we need to do there.
Yeah, Brian, with that said, we did have a question come up, and it seems kind of in line with what you're showing right now. And can you animate objects to move?
You can. So if I wanted that door to be there, the problem is you're going to have to do like 15 different material or positional lineups. So if I wanted to animate the door opening, not just open and closed, I would come down here and do it in one location, rotate it slightly, save it. 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 Rotate it like 100 times. And once I've done that, then I could go through and add each one of those alternates to the storyboard, and it would show that object animated. So that's kind of what I've done in the other one. When I was doing it with my section moving up through the building, I literally did a cross-section about every foot of the building and animated it, saved it as a positional lineup, saved it as a positional lineup. Then I did an animation of this playing, and I said, okay, do this cross-section here, 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 and I basically put all those cross-sections one after another. So that's how you could animate the objects being moved. If you wanted the roof to fly off and come back in, you could also do a scale animation, and it'll like scale it from large to small type scenario. So I've had clients do that too, like with concrete. They want to show this little precast tilted wall come into place, and rather than tipping up, they just had it kind of grew into place. And yes, it did have the sound effect. Okay, maybe not. So with that said, it looks like everybody's doing pretty well here, no questions. The last thing I was going to talk about is once this is all done, you can then go plus publish images, publish movies, publish to YouTube, publish your web presentation. So there's a lot of different ways to go through and publish this out. So I can come down here and say, I'm going to go publish this. What size do I want this to go out as? You've got all these different options of what you might be looking at. Am I going to do all the slides and individual slides? If I had like 15 slides, I could publish all 15 slides as one movie. I could publish individual movies. I can publish just shots, so all the different scenes I have. A lot of different options when you're going through and doing your publishing. Again, what type of file then are you going to publish this out to? You're going to go out to an MPEG, an image file with a whole bunch of GIFs, Adobe Flash. What do you want to do for those presentations? You'll even see there's different tabs up here, so I can come in here and say I'm going to do a web presentation. And if I'm doing a web presentation, you've got preset sizes. And it tries to show you in the background what that size is going to be by like graying out how big that is, etc. You can say what's your orientation. Just a lot of things to go through and set this up. I'm not going to run this because it'll run for definitely longer than the 3 minutes I have left. But again, just to kind of show you what I did before, I did get this one set up. And by the way, this is an actual building for the USDA Forest Service. It's a warming hut somewhere in the Colorado mountains. So I did come in here and run my showcase movies. And I think you guys did see, ooh, I don't think this laptop has Flash Player installed. Yeah, I don't think it's going to work because I don't have Flash Player installed on this. So I was going to run the Flash Player movie. But in case, I've got the HTML file. I think I showed you the one before. Let's show you two this time. So this one you can see, there's my slide one. Actually, let's run slide two. So this will be the one where you were asking, can I animate like things moving? It's kind of my animation of the building section going up. You're seeing a lot less clips of it than I am. But I can just pretty much go through and say, okay, run this, show the individual section moving up through the building. So if I wanted to animate something going through, that's how I'd have to do it. Definitely not going to be like 3ds Max from animating people walking around or cars driving by. Definitely not going to do that.
Mr. Brian, we had another question pop in here. Is how do you import site photographs to serve as a background that varies as you rotate the model?
You're not going to import site photographs. What you would have to do is go create an HDR file. I think that's what the file is called. It sounds familiar. There are programs out there that you can go download where you can put a whole bunch of images together. It'll stitch those images together and create an HDR file. Because an HDR file is basically, a panoramic stitched into a cylinder or in some cases a dome or half of a dome. So snow globe, as I like to call it. So you have to go through and create the HDR type file from images. You cannot do that directly inside of Showcase, but I have had one or two clients, oh yeah, our animation department did this and it looks great. So they truly do go around and take pictures, create that HDR file, and get it set the way they want. So can't do that in Showcase. You'll have to do that outside somewhere else. Okay, well, it looks like those were the only questions. So we would just like to say thanks for everyone being here. If you have any other questions or concerns, feel free to email myself or CAD-1, and we can definitely get a follow-up on those. So
again, thank you, and we appreciate your time. And again, this is another way for us to show another benefit of having the new suites out, and in this case, it's the building design suite. So I believe few of you are on that. Others of you that are still looking at that, let us know. We can get you more information out and about upgrading to the appropriate suite. So again, we thank you for your time, and any questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you again.